Thank you very much, David. That was very good. And most importantly, I identify with the last point, simply because the transition has been quite significant in terms of going from what we used to do maybe 15 years ago to where we are today. So thank you very much for bringing that to the forefront. Now, could I please request all of the other speakers from this morning to join the stage? And we open the floor again for some questions from you. And we have somebody very keen at the back. Stephen.
Go to the back first.
Thank you. David, a couple of questions for you. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
The first thing, I suppose, when you look at the assets and the migration or the transition to BIM with preventive maintenance, I think we're now moving to predictive maintenance in a lot of instances. And especially when you're looking at AHUs and vibration analysis or setting the parameters. Where do you see the future going with predictive maintenance within BIM? And the second observation is I'm an avid SFG20 user, outstanding platform. It's excellent. It's now been HTM aligned. But I suppose it has to be noted that HTM or the SFG20 platform are generic inspection protocols. And again, when you're on a BIM project and you're looking at your asset handover information, you have to look at your manufacturer recommendations, which trumps SFG20 as well. So there's just a couple of points there.
Yeah, so probably just deal with the second point first, which is to do with SFG20. Ultimately, though, the values that are being put into the system for that are actually indicative. Because what we know is that the maintenance engineers have the expertise to actually set up the maintenance regime against that piece of equipment. As you say, they need to follow the manufacturer's instructions and recommendations. So the purpose of those codes isn't so much to be definitive, but to be indicative. And to some extent, the SFG20 description just points people in the right direction to say, look, this is what that piece of equipment is, but then they need to go into the detail to be able to apply the correct maintenance regime. Just trying to get back to the first point. What was the first? I'm trying to, go ahead.
Predictive maintenance.
Sorry, say that again?
Where you were looking at BIM and the integration to plan preventative,
condition-based maintenance.
We're looking now at predictive maintenance into the future.
I think this is really critical, which is about learning to walk before you can run. And I think there's a danger in the next, level of this, which is, predictive or condition-based maintenance, which is arguably a more efficient approach rather than simply having these regimes which are conducted all the time. Ultimately, what we want as an outcome is to reduce the level of reactive maintenance. So to drive towards that outcome, and in the first instance, is to simply put in the PPM regimes that mean that in year 7 and year 14, you're not seeing those usual major repairs, which are suddenly just hitting the bottom line and hitting everybody's budgets. If you can at least do that, you're in the right direction. And I think, yes, the next level of this is around things like the Internet of Things, sensors which identify how the equipment is actually performing. But we've just got to get, and it's become a bit of a mantra of mine because it went in the magazine, which is we've just got to get back to basics. If we can get the basics right, then we can move on from there. Thank you.
I think at that point there, and I will come on to your question next and then come back to you, does any other panel want to talk about anything they've observed on moving to predictive maintenance, to sort of move away from break fix to planned to predictive? I'm thinking of data centers or anybody.
Is it on? Yep. No, it's just to reinforce the point about back to basics, and that's the approach that we have taken, is trying to get a baseline in terms of handover and accurate information to then build off from, and getting that right and getting the industry to move to that point is a challenge in itself. But then beyond that, our approach is to look at reduction initially of backlog or reactive maintenance activities, and then all the other sort of predictive stuff can come through the IoT sort of resource.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. agree with both of them. In my presentation, the foundation was that, for example, the asset list, so the asset naming of the elements has to be defined properly. If we fail on that foundation, we will fail in the future in everything that we will do in reaction. So the basement are the most important thing. And I think you asked about the asset naming convention. It's quite difficult to define an asset convention for everybody. So, for example, David will have a different one as we are using, but at least the message is that we need to have one standardized, because that is what we will use in the future for everything in maintenance.
I think probably is on, yeah. I think probably something else we need to appreciate is the supply chain as well behind where it should be just now. You know, contractors are under a lot of pressure to deliver these amazing digital environments that clients are looking for. And they're basically taking the brunt because the supply chain at least 10, 15 years behind where they should be just now. And I think everybody knows this was coming. But again, there's a lot of commercial pressures in a lot of companies just now. Again, profits are very tight. But again, they're not necessarily been asked to deliver extra information, it's delivered a different way. But the new digital way could maybe take them longer to actually do that as well. So there's more education as well. And again, education for BIM and asset management isn't cheap. That costs a lot of money. So again, I think probably there has to be more government initiatives to actually now help educate supply chain a bit more and actually give some extra funding for that, because that's the really lacking. We've seen a lot of projects, definitely.
So, guys, just picking up from what Graham just said, question to all of you. Where do you think the line is? And I'm throwing this question out to the other panelists who are sitting on the floor as well. Where do you think the line is in terms of requesting our supply chain not only to follow the information requirements and produce the information as stipulated, but also in terms of standard methods and processes that we stipulate? How does your individual organizations, how do you approach this?
I'll go first, I've got it, okay. It's quite a difficult one. Again, it all comes back to, again, if you're using now small contractors, SMEs, they don't have now an information manager, a BIM manager. They can't afford to spend 50, 60, 70, 80,000 pound salaries in which they do. And again, it's insane the sum salaries that people are now demanding. I think there has to be a realization with the clients of what they're actually asking for and what they actually need. And there has to be a more open discussion with clients going, it's great that you're demanding all this, but unless you're going to pay an absolute premium to get it all and help train everyone, you're not really going to get it. And again, contractors are going to come in with high prelims going, we can deliver all this, but it is going to cost an absolute fortune. So I think that there has to be an open discussion here. I think a lot, like David talked about, it's like now, walk before you can run. As an industry, we are doing that just now. All these standards that have been out the last 10 years is great, but we're still 10 years behind where we should be. And people need an honest realization. And again, the clients, when they're doing capability capacity statements, have to really scrutinize these to make sure they're actually getting a team on board that can actually deliver. The amount of times I've employed in a project, we've got a team on board, but they're BIM level 0, but the client wants BIM level 2, whatever. So there has to be a more honest discussion, I think.
Just wanted to come in. I know, Sir Stephen knew this. I'd be the one disagreeing with people up here on stage. It's not complicated. It's not hard. It shouldn't be expensive for the tiers, for the lower tiers, for the people who are just installing equipment. They shouldn't have to be doing anything. They should just be doing what they're doing in a slightly different way. They are collecting information that they collect anyway, installation dates, who installed it. It's up to the clients and the main principal contractors to make it really simple for all of these people. It's us who are failing, the clients and the principal contractors, not the tiers that are lower down. We're making it too difficult for them. Somebody who is installing fire stopping shouldn't be having to read through a 20-page EIR and a 30-page BEP and a 3D model. It's got nothing to do with them. We're making it wrong for them. So, yeah, that's
Good.
it.
I'm going to go back to the audience now. There's a few more questions hanging around. Now I'm going to go here first.
Thank you. My name is Diogo. I work as a BIM manager in Switzerland, where we have a quite different contractual context also. And I would like to ask, in the same context, I've heard a lot about how hard it is to get the right adjusted EARs. What's your view on integrated project delivery has a contractual way or a contractual framework to deal with these problems that the small contractor doesn't have the means or shouldn't be confronted with a 50-page EIR when at the end he just has to deliver 2 attributes or something like that, as an agile way to make sure that everyone is on board, that everyone delivers what the maintenance needs at the end, and the whole chain is involved in a process that's agile enough to make sure that this part delivers this part, and the big players deliver the big sums.
Yeah, so there's 2 things I'll do. I'll respond to that in one context, which is that what integrated project delivery does is it takes us away from that adversarial situation that we have, which means that you can have earlier collaboration rather than this situation where everybody is holding on to information and trying to make sure that they don't give too much away, because essentially you're going to recoup it through claims and all kinds of legal mechanisms and so on. So I think that that's an advantage. That just creates an environment of collaboration. I think it can happen. I think some of the stuff that David Mosey has been doing in terms of the alliancing frameworks in the UK points the way to a different arrangement between the client and the suppliers and so on. I do want to switch to just that question that you had, which is where the line drawn. And it's one of the issues I've had with 19650, and Graham knows about some of my feelings about that, which is that it is never good, I'm going to get shot down in flames here, but it's never good for a client to specify methods and processes. Typically, if you're going to present me as a contractor with a proposal, I expect you to give me your method statement, and then I review it, and so on. So my line is, I'm not going to tell you how to do this. I'll give you the what, and I'll give you the when, but not the how. Because all that's going to happen is if it goes wrong, you're going to come back to me and say, but you told me to do it that way. And I think that there are aspects of this which are opening us to liability. But anyway, I'll let others have a go.
Anybody want to shoot him down?
let me continue with him. Totally agree.
No, go for it.
No, because if I hire you because you are the expert, I cannot tell you how you have to do things. I hire you to give me because you are the expert. Sometimes you can advise, I would like to have this, but you are the expert. Give me your response because you have to do it. If not, we will be responsible for failing.
Absolutely.
So that's where your capabilities and capacities assessment comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah. But however, going back to Johnny, what you said, I completely identify with that. Meaning, as a client, you have a huge responsibility to clearly state what you want so your supply chain is able to understand. Also, to be sympathetic that sometimes your supply chain is doing this for the first time. So going back to your people's perspective there.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the big challenges I have, because I mean, some of this stuff was resolved a long time ago with supply chain capability assessments. And when I find that people are either just putting up, I don't know, project showcases, rather than actually demonstrating how they're going to do it, and probably even giving you a dry run to show the process that they're going to engage in to deliver it, I just think we're almost walking backwards and we're not delivering the way that we intended to. So it is something that I am very keen on, not just from an IT perspective or BIM perspective, but do you have the right maintenance people who understand and can talk to maintenance people on my side? Do you have the right finance people who can do that as well? Yeah.
I think one of the things that myself and David have in common is we both have very large existing estates, and when you have existing estates, it makes you think about things in a very different way. Because like a lot of times in our industry, we're thinking about the future, and we're thinking about how do I do it in a perfect environment now, and you're like, okay, I have this naming convention, and you go, brilliant, I'll be working on that naming convention, everything going forward will be great. But you've just forgotten about 95% of your whole estate. So, like we work on we don't need any any asset strategy for our components. They are called whatever they want to be called, and we have we have computer systems. Computers are brilliant at doing it. Once the computer knows what it is, who cares what it's called? So we just use random barcodes. Well, it's not quite random, but we use just a randomized number. And that for us, it works absolutely brilliant, because once it's in the computer system does everything. You know, so yeah, we've taken a completely different approach of looking back and going, we have all of this estate. Am I going to go back and rename 1 billion individual components? No way. So yeah, and that's what's led our thinking into how we see things and going, will this part of our new build program help our existing estate plus our future estate? And when you start thinking about things differently like that, it really changes your mindset on how some of this works. Obviously, if we were starting an estate right from the beginning, we would do things in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
one more question out here.
Yeah. Last question.
Well, it's not so much a question as a point, and I'd just like to agree with Johnny as well that obviously in terms of tier 3, you know, it should be simple, but it should also be an imperative. And the way in my former sort of BIM role, we try to encourage commercials not to pay tier 3 until they delivered the information. Information needs to be given a value and withheld unless you get the information. Because what we're finding is they're installed, whatever, they're getting paid and they're gone. So the imperative there wasn't to give the information 6 months, 9 months later. So there needs to be a value put on information. That's what I would say. Maybe you'd like to comment on that.
And just to reinforce that point, this is one of the big challenges we have, is that very often the people involved in project delivery, pretty much, they're under considerable pressure, obviously, to deliver the building. Once they get the building over the line, there's a tendency to just kind of move to practical completion. And then you don't have the same leverage, obviously, as you had before that happened. So you really do need to engage with your project managers and sort of say, look, if we don't get this information, it needs to be processed with an early warning notice. If we don't get it and we move into practical completion, this has to be a defect. And that's a different mindset to see a lack of information as a defect. It's a completely different mindset. So it's one of the big challenges we have.
Thank you, David. I see, Ryan, you were about to make a point earlier. Would you like to add something to it?
No, it's just interesting to listen to everybody's views, and amongst us all representing clients, it's nice to see that we're starting to get to a point where clients are starting to become informed in what they're asking for. And I was reflecting back on, I think it was your presentation, Peter, about the caretaker, and you know, it's with that sort of line of sight that ultimately they're the people who are going to access information, who are, you know, maintaining either the assets or trying to fix them. But conversely, just what you touched on my own presentation, the role of the client's changing. They need to be able to identify what information they need in order to understand how the asset's actually performing once it's handed over. Yeah, essentially, I think that's the shift we're seeing now, that clients are actually starting to work out what data do they need, you know, to achieve those sort of goals. So, yeah.
I think as clients need to be aware that it starts with them. You know, and again, there was a sort of cloudiness with the old PAS documents, so now who actually does what, but again, with the new ISO 1960, it really hammers in that the client, it starts with the pointing party. They have to set the framework, they have to tell you exactly what to do, otherwise what you're actually delivering. So I think clients have to get over that and actually take ownership of that as well, and stop trying to pass on risk to other members of the team. They've got to take ownership and actually move it forward.
Okay. Any final thoughts? Burning desire to share? Anyone? Mano?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't take a seat at the podium, so I will now. I do really, and sorry, I'm not a native English speaker, so I hope I can make myself clear. I fully agree with the panel and their comments about how we should behave as a client. But I would like also to make a comment about the state of our industry. We are an industry that is behind, fishing, hunting and agriculture. We are a very traditional industry and we need to make change in our industry. And in that sense, I think it's very important that we move on that ladder and improve our industry to a much more higher state that we are currently in. So I think we as clients should and can ask the most advanced questions of our ecosystem and try to educate them to a higher level. So answering on your question, where is the line? I think there is no line in how we should engage with our ecosystem. And I do fully agree that we need to make it simple and we need to make it understandable for even our tier 3 partners. But I think we should really make that difference and all together work and collaborate on moving this industry to a better industry. Work together with the automotive, aerospace industry to really make that change happen. And I think we need to do that going forward.
Guys, there is one burning question at the back, and we have just about time for just one more.
Hiya, Harry Parnell, Balfour BT. Fully agree with you, Menno. There is no line. Why isn't the asset maintainer inside of the design collaboration sessions saying this is the information that I need? They need to be brought earlier in the process. If a client hasn't got an asset maintainer early in that process, you will not get what you want. It needs to be appointed and get in their meetings. The client might have a different department. Bring that department in. Get them in early, get them part of the team, get coordinating and collaborating early enough. Otherwise, you will not get what you need at the end, or do the predictive maintenance, as this gentleman said.
That's a great point.
I mean,
Anyone?
It is a great point, and the intent behind that was, of course, something we called soft landings. Somehow, we really haven't seen the realization of what that could do. The fact that you can get the maintenance people involved at the time that you're doing sort of plant replacement studies to identify what are the best routes for that and so on. So absolutely take your point, Harry. I think it's something that we need to do more of, and I can only hope that all of the clients represented here are going to take that on board. Really, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. But again, that was the main reason why the SFT made that a part of the elite funding in Scotland, is a client has to have a client information manager. So there's somebody, at least with hopefully some education, can actually help steer them and actually develop the whole strategy and then validate what's actually been received as well. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, we do something similar, but it's about, for me, it's about having the right people in the room and like bringing in a BIM client BIM information manager into the room is probably often not the right type of person. You want to be bringing in like heads of engineering and people like that who actively know what. It's not about the process of how do we pass the information around. It's about what information do we end up with and what systems are you putting in our building. And like our engineers going, we don't want those systems in our building because they are incredibly costly to maintain, rather than I'm not getting a Kobe file, because that's you're bringing the wrong people into the conversation. So yeah, I think this is why sometimes it fails, because the people managing this process, because they're often people like me, information managers, and they never transitioned out of being a BIM person into thinking about how their organization really operates and what's beneficial to organizations. So yeah, I think it's about definitely bring the right people, having the people in the conversation early, but the right people in the conversation early.
Okay, so I think it's time to wrap up. So first of all, thank you everyone for listening intently, and also thank you very much for that discussion towards the end, because it's a fitting ending to the overall topic, information management from a client's perspective. So we have a small short coffee break now, and then please return, because we will be talking about future aspirations, what we want to do next.